Insight. I'm your host, Jeremy Verdusco, editor of The Driller magazine. This is the second part of a wide-ranging Toolbox talk about safety gear we recorded live from Groundwater Week 2020. Co-host Brock Yordy and I were joined in the virtual trade show booth by safety expert and drilling instructor Dave Bowers. The first part of our discussion focused on eye and hand protection, so if you haven't listened to that episode yet, go back and catch up. This second part of the discussion gets into ear protection and the importance of protecting your crews in order to attract the best drilling talent. Here is part 2 of the Drillers Groundwater Week 2020 Toolbox talk.
Real quick, to Brock, you had mentioned at the outset hearing protection. Dave, you've written about this before where you talk about you being a loud talker. Are there any other dangers other than being the guy that everyone can hear at the party?
Yeah. Thing called tinnitus. That ringing in your ears that I wrote about that I have all the time. But what it does more than that, studies have found that it affects mood. It affects concentration.
Equilibrium.
So when it gets to a certain point, it's just constantly there and you lose focus, right? Which might explain how some of my articles need so much work, But truly, you lose focus. It becomes difficult to do your day-to-day operations because you just can't get away from that sound. And I'm right now prepping for one of our trainings that I'm going to be talking about hearing protection. So they found a way, and I don't know how widely spread it is, but they've got a little modulator with earbuds that you wear that is locating the source of your tinnitus, which is actually not in your ear, it's in your brain, in the hearing section of your brain, and giving the opposite response to try to quell it, that you wear a few hours a day, and they're seeing great improvements in people who have bad tinnitus that are having difficulties concentrating, difficulty staying in a good mood, all of that stuff, and they're seeing a lot of really positive things. So I think it's always best not to get in that position, but I think there's some light at the end of the tunnel for that.
It's interesting. University of Michigan has teamed up with Apple, and my Apple Watch, if you download the app, when I walk into an area that's 90 decibels or greater, and the rule is, 90 decibels for sustained 8 hours will start to, give you hearing damage. And is it every 5 or 10, Dave? It basically cuts in half, correct?
It's actually every 3 doubles the amount of loudness.
Okay.
So this goes beyond just those little spongy earplugs, though. Like what does good hearing protection look like? If I'm trying to make this case to my crews or the guys that are like, I gotta hear the change in the drill as it's running, so I know what I'm getting into. Like what's the case to make, and what does good ear protection look like?
Good ear protection may be those little foamy things, right? It's what fits, and everybody's got a different ear canal. So I might have, and there's some better foam units that are softer and some that are harder, but we may have a few different shapes of those that'll work better, right? They have what's called an NRR, noise reduction rating, and a noise reduction rating says when properly fit, this will reduce the sound by this many decibels.
Yeah.
Right. So if you have a 10 or a 25 or whatever, doesn't mean it's going to give you a 10 or a 25, but it gives you an idea of the quality of that noise protection. And muffs are not better than those little foamy earplugs.
Okay.
They're just more comfortable, right? Depends on each one what their noise reduction rate. Now, we can get fancy, and they do make them that have noise
canceling.
attenuating, right? Where they'll cancel noise out, which is the same kind of technology they're using for tinnitus, which it'll take vibration and make the opposite vibration to quell that. And then some of the really fancy ones might even have a microphone in them that picks up voice frequencies. So they'll quell the other sounds, but you'll hear voices. And I've actually got a pair of those in here somewhere.
The professional shooters are, they're gotten those. I think in 2015, the end of 2015, I wrote about noise canceling, hearing protection that was going to, help our industry, but they cost money, and we're in water and we're in mud. The analog, just foam, good hearing protection, just like Dave said about reducing from, 10 to 25, a lot of drill rigs, if we're into the 110, 120 decibel range, and we can reduce back to 90 or less, that's the goal, because it's about slowing that impact of that sound wave going through, knocking down the cilia in your ear and hitting the back of your eardrum. That's the entire concept, right, Dave? Is we're trying to slow that impact of, ringing our brain.
It's like anything, right? What if we can lessen the impact, we can get greater exposure times, right? We get down below an 85 is where we want to be. The standard says 95, but at 85, we have to do something to knock it down, right? 90 is the 8-hour average for OSHA for the PEL, but at 85, that's what they call the action level, where we don't have a choice. We must do something to try to keep anybody from having, so that you're not like me yelling at the microphone all day. But the best hearing protection, again, costs money. We can have the noise canceling, or we can go and they can actually fit our ear, because what I say, properly fit. They can fit your ear and make custom hearing protection, but now, and we'll have the best noise reduction ratio we can get. But now I have one pair that, we have to wash it. So there becomes other things, and it's very expensive, Go ahead.
So I wanted to kind of bring it all together and touch on a point, Brock, that you had talked about earlier with the kind of difference between say the mom and pop shops that we'll see in a lot of areas around the country, and then the bigger companies that are building the bigger, irrigation or, neighborhood or citywide water well projects, that kind of stuff. Now, when you're working at a mom and pop shop, you can get away with not doing any of this. It's, I've heard it 100 times, well, OSHA never comes out here. But from a driller perspective, and even from a company owner perspective, if you want to get bigger, if you want to be in the big leagues, you have to be able to bring all these pieces together and execute, wearing your eyewear, wearing your hearing protection, all of this stuff. Tell me a little bit about that. Like, as you've seen, worked at bigger companies that do bigger jobs, how does the expectation change?
So the expectation,
I mean, everyone wants to be safe.
Right. So the expectation changes with the dollar value of the project, which is a disappointing concept, but a $7,500 water well that you're going to be in and out on the job site in one day is why OSHA doesn't catch up. And when OSHA catches up on those guys, they jump them for not having the acetylene tanks separated properly, or the low-hanging fruit, and don't even get into the effective safety program. So then we start looking at projects that have to be bonded, projects that I have to work with good people from Dave's, union and whatnot on. And you have a safety program that's required. You have, there's so many different safety companies where if you need to be gold shovel certified, or these different situations where you got to show that everybody's compliant. and you have to show that your TRIR or your safety rating, which a year and a half ago, if you had one under 3 was good. And now suddenly you can't have a recordable, depending on the man hours you have. And we've talked about this before, where, 1.5 is what BP expects, or Kinder Morgan. And you look in Dave's area and there's a lot of BP and Kinder Morgan going. So you have to have the safety program. But then from that dollar amount, your company's grossing more money. You have more to lose. You have more invested in your people. And so I'll let Dave go through this, but a bigger company will have a safety program that also has a health aspect that has his people getting checked, getting their hearing checked, getting their, their lungs checked. Dave, tell me about.
So if we're exposed to a hazard, right, our HAZCOM, right, and our medical monitoring has to reflect our record keeping that we've done a baseline for our employees, so we know where they start. And then yearly, if they're doing HAZWOPER work, or biannually, if they're not doing HAZWOPER work, we should be checking on the overall health of our employees. And that is, a regular physical, audiometric testing, right? Blood work, everything specifically so that we know they're healthy, we haven't overexposed them. And if something happens, we are in that chemical facility or whatever, and we fear that they were exposed, we have to send them immediately to get a battery of tests and do a physical. But beyond that, I mean, that's getting a little beyond what this topic was. But for this topic, I got one other thing that I like to bring up. We always talk about, how do you bring good talent in?
Yeah.
Well, occasionally you're trying to bring talent in from other places. If you're not doing all these things, it turns that talent off.
Because you don't care about your people.
I won't give a name, but just in this trade show was going through and watching videos and some stuff that a manufacturer had put out. And I watched a video of a gentleman running a pump that they were trying to, a pump truck, that they were trying to promote the pump truck. And all I could see was a guy in cowboy boots with no hard hat working by himself. And I was like, what are you doing? This is not good promotion for what you're doing, right? That's, no matter how great that pump hoist worked, it didn't matter, because my attention was on, why would you be promoting this? And so that's a big part of it. If somebody goes, hey, how's this company work for? Oh, well, I've had people say at different times, well, hey, what do you think about this company or that company? Well, eventually I think someone's going to get hurt that's there. Well, if that's what your potential employees think of the company, how are you going to get top level talent to want to come there? Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big part of it. I mean, at some point, there's a reason that those big companies are successful, and they're trying to keep those numbers down that Brock talked about. But at the same time, buy-in happens when everybody's doing it right. Yeah. And then you find people saying, hey, whoa, where's this? Do you have I don't think we're that far off from, people complain about hard hats. We're going to be going to safety helmets here within the next few years. Yeah. And you'll wish you had a hard hat after that. The safety helmet's more comfortable, I think, than the hard hat is. But the safety helmet, everybody looks like that kid that, in second grade that had to wear the helmet to school, right? So there's some things coming up. We really want to try to give the best impression that we can.
Yeah.
So my father-in-law, retired Army major, and I I was talking to him about this, and he said, you know what the number one core component to our mission was? And I go, no, Greg, what was it? And he goes, people first. So if it's the people that are executing the mission or the people that you're taking care of in the mission, it's about people, it's about heartbeats, so we have to take care of our people. All of the topics we've talked about with safety right here, and making sure we're screening and we have a good safety program. The darkest joke I know from this industry right now is I called the tinnitus hotline and it just kept on ringing. And it's terrible.
I can't believe you told that joke a second time.
I know. But what terrifies the hell out of me is a struck by, a caught in between, there's so many situations that happen that you go, yup, man, that sucked. I got rehabilitated. I'm better, and I will have better situational awareness. And then there are the sleepers that are hearing. We don't realize how much damage we're doing to our hearing until, I look at my father get down on one knee to talk to my daughter or my son. You look at mesothelioma, silicosis, again, situations that don't happen with one bad choice, but multiple bad choices over months to years of a lifetime. And losing your hearing or, passing away from the diminished lung capacity, those type of things, or, chemical exposures that you didn't need to expose yourself to, are the things in our industry that we just go, stop being a puss and get up there and finish what you're doing. And we work hard so that we can play hard with our family. And at one point, all I want to do is play hard. And that means I got to take care of myself now.
Yeah.
Well, I took the liberty while you were talking, Brock, of looking up the number I couldn't remember. And
the tinnitus hotline?
300,000 eye injuries a year, out of which it's estimated 270,000 were preventable.
Wow.
And that's work in the U.S. So, that's 90%. All we got to do is just actually wear the stuff that we're supposed to wear.
Well, at Driller, we're always trying to promote and convince people to use all their safety gear, and I hope people listen.
Well, our industry in general has to move towards that big company, that big mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're a small company, that's the only way forward. Otherwise, you're going to really struggle to get jobs, and that's really what it's all about. If we can't get jobs and pay off the equipment and pay our employees and pay for our house and our food and stuff like that, then the small companies are going to go away, and that ain't right either. So I think we just have to man up, like you said, and sometimes manning up means doing the thing that seems like it's the less manly thing to do.
Yeah. Well, and as awful as it sounds, what's worse for the bottom line, buying new gloves for you guys every 3 weeks, or facing that lawsuit because someone lost a couple of fingers and you can't prove it wasn't your fault.
And if you Google the anatomy of a human hand, I guess there's no other type of hand, is there? That's silly for me to say, but you look at the complexities of the bones and the tendons and everything that's going on. Hand surgery and rehabilitation is $750,000 easy when you get into a crushing, or you look at somebody that ran a saw the wrong way and they go across their fingers. That, like, hand injuries are very complex to fix.
Well, that's why there's only us and a few apes that have opposable thumbs, right? I mean, that's what makes us unique. And, you know, our ability to grasp things even when our mind doesn't grasp everything it's supposed to. So that's all I got.